3 expeditions, 3 continents, over 140 experienced people between them. Not one survivor. But here's the part that should really bother you. In every single case, something did come back. A nameplate, found 60 years later, thousands of kilometers from where its owner vanished. A signet ring, surfacing in a shop in a city its owner never lived to reach. 2 massive ships, found on the ocean floor, in the wrong place entirely, far from where records say they were abandoned. Things kept moving, long after the people carrying them should have stopped. And there's a second pattern here that's almost as strange. In 2 of these 3 cases, the people sent to find the missing vanished too, or died trying. So what actually happened in that Arctic ice? What happened in that jungle to a man who was arguably the most experienced explorer alive? And why, in the strangest case of all, did his own family spend decades receiving messages from him after he was already gone? Stay to the end, because the answer to that last question is the one thing about this video that will not sit right with you. Case 1. Ludwig Leichhardt, the Outback that swallowed 7 men, 1848. Let's start with a man who'd already come back from the dead once. In 1844, Ludwig Leichhardt led an expedition nearly 5,000 kilometers across uncharted Australian terrain. He was gone so long, the public assumed he'd died. Then he walked back into Sydney like a ghost and became a national hero. So in 1848, when he announced an even bigger crossing, nearly 4,800 kilometers, from Queensland all the way to the west coast, nobody doubted him. He set off with 5 other Europeans, 2 Aboriginal guides, and 77 animals. A serious, well-equipped team. On April 3rd, they stopped at a remote outpost. A shepherd asked where they were headed. Leichhardt's answer, to the setting sun. They walked into it, and they never walked back out. Search parties combed the Outback for decades, 1852, 1889, all the way into the 1930s. For most of that time, they found nothing. Not a bone, not a buckle. Then, in 1900, 52 years after Leichhardt vanished, an Aboriginal stockman found something wedged into a tree deep in Western Australia. A small brass nameplate. Inscribed, Ludwig Leichhardt, 1848. It was authenticated as real, which meant Leichhardt's party had made it 3/4 of the way across the continent, brutally far from where they were last seen alive. But here's the detail that's harder to explain. Beside that nameplate was a gun, burned, partially destroyed, as if something violent or something in fire had happened right there. We don't know if it was an ambush. We don't know if it was starvation, thirst, or something else entirely. What we know is this: 7 people and 77 animals disappeared from the map, and in over 175 years, they left behind exactly 1 confirmed object. 1 nameplate. That's it. And whatever happened to the 6 men who carried it that final stretch into the setting sun, the Outback has never given it back. Case 2. Franklin's Lost Expedition. 2 ships that moved on their own. 1845. Now, a case with far more evidence, and somehow an even stranger unanswered question. In 1845, Sir John Franklin sailed into the Canadian Arctic with 2 of the most advanced ships of the era, HMS Erebus and HMS Terror, reinforced hulls, steam engines, 3 years of food, 129 men. This wasn't a reckless voyage. This was Britain's best. In July 1845, whaling ships spotted them in Baffin Bay, waiting for good ice. Nobody ever saw them alive again. For years, nothing. Then Franklin's wife forced the Admiralty into launching one of the largest search efforts in naval history. Over 24 expeditions across 3 decades. Some of those searchers died looking. That's worth sitting with for a second. people went looking for the missing, and the Arctic took some of them too. In 1859, 14 years after the ships vanished, a search team found a note in a stone cairn. The first part, from 1847, was almost cheerful. All well. But someone had come back and written in the margins 11 months later. Franklin was dead. 24 men were dead. The ships had been trapped in ice for over a year and were now abandoned. The survivors were walking south on foot, hoping to reach the mainland. None of them made it. Inuit witnesses described exhausted men collapsing in the snow. Later, bones were found with cut marks, consistent with cannibalism, exactly as those same Inuit accounts had said all along, and exactly what a horrified British public refused to believe for over a century. So that should be the end of the story. But here's where it gets genuinely bizarre. In 2014, searchers finally found the wreck of Erebus. In 2016, they found Terror. Both ships were remarkably intact, and both were found far south of where the historical record said they'd been abandoned. Ice can carry a drifting, empty ship for miles. That part's plausible. But some historians aren't convinced ice alone explains the distance. Which raises an uncomfortable question nobody has definitively answered. Did some of the crew make it back to those ships, try to sail them south one final time, and fail again, silently, with no note left behind to tell us? We have wrecks now. We have a partial timeline. What we don't have is the one thing that matters most: the last days of the men who tried and failed to bring those ships home. Case 3. Percy Fawcett, the man who may have vanished on purpose, 1925. And now, the most famous name on this list. The disappearance that directly inspired Indiana Jones. By 1925, Percy Fawcett was the most experienced Amazon explorer alive, and utterly convinced, based on an old, dubious colonial document, that a lost civilization was hidden in Brazil's jungle. He called it Zed. That April, at 58 years old, he set out with his son Jack and Jack's best friend Raleigh Rimmel. Deliberately just the three of them, Fawcett believed a smaller party drew less danger. His final letter, sent from a place he grimly nicknamed Dead Horse Camp, read, "You need have no fear of any failure." Then silence. Permanent silence. Here's the first strange detail. The coordinates in that final letter didn't match Fawcett's own earlier records for that exact same camp. For a man famous for his precision, that's not a rounding error. Many historians believe he did it on purpose, because before he left, Fawcett had explicitly asked that no one come looking for him if he failed to return. People came looking anyway. Over a dozen expeditions searched for Fawcett over the following decades. Several of those searchers also died or vanished, chasing a man who may not have wanted to be found. In 1952, a researcher announced that a local tribe had confessed to killing Fawcett's party decades earlier and produced bones as proof. But when tested, the bones couldn't be confirmed as his. A tribal elder later denied any involvement at all. Since then, fragments of Fawcett have surfaced in the strangest ways. A brass plate from his gear, found with a tribesman nowhere near where he vanished. His personal signet ring, turning up decades later in a shop hundreds of miles away. Objects that kept moving, long after the man who carried them should have stopped. But there's one more detail, the one I told you to wait for. Here's the thread connecting all three of these cases. And it's not the jungle, the ice, or the desert. It's what got left behind, and where it ended up. Leichhardt's nameplate, found 3/4 of the way across a continent, next to a burned gun with no bodies attached to it. Franklin's ships, drifting to a location that still doesn't fully add up. And Fawcett's ring, resurfacing in a city his own final letter never mentioned reaching. In every case, the evidence outlived the explanation. The proof that these men existed traveled further than we can account for, while the actual story of their final days simply stopped. Now, here's the detail I asked you to wait for. Fawcett's wife, Nina, never accepted that her husband and son were simply gone. For years afterward, she claimed she was receiving telepathic messages from Percy. And she wasn't the only one. A psychic consulted about the case reportedly claimed contact with Fawcett all the way up until 1948, over 20 years after he vanished, when the psychic said Fawcett finally reported his own death. Now, to be clear, there's no credible evidence supporting any of this. It's almost certainly grief, projected onto the unknown, the way people have always tried to fill silence with meaning. But therefore, ask yourself this. Fawcett deliberately falsified his coordinates. He explicitly told people not to search for him. He'd spent his whole life chasing rumors of a hidden civilization most experts thought didn't exist. What if the most unsettling possibility isn't that the jungle killed him? What if it's that he got exactly what he wanted? To disappear so completely that even the people who loved him couldn't tell if he was speaking from beyond or simply never planning to speak again. We'll likely never know. Not for Fawcett. Not for the 6 men who vanished chasing the setting sun in Australia. Not for the crews who tried, one last time, to sail 2 ghost ships home through Arctic ice. 3 expeditions, 3 continents. All of them left something behind. None of them left an ending. If cases like this get under your skin the way they should, subscribe, because we're only getting started.